Eligible for SNAP benefits for buying food. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the new Secretary of the Department of
America's food supply is under attack, and not by who you think.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is calling out major food companies for quietly pumping our groceries full of toxic additives, the same ones banned in Europe and beyond. Why? Because they can. Because it's profitable. And because no one's stopping them.
You should be able to get them. If you want to eat Hostess Twinkies, you should be able to do that. But you should know what the impacts are.
Now RFK Jr. is on a mission to change that, exposing the dirty secrets they don't want you to know. What if the bread on your table wasn't just food, but a chemical experiment? The kind of experiment where you're the test subject, and the corporations stuffing your loaf with additives are the ones cashing in. Sound dramatic? Take a look at what's actually inside. Potassium bromate, a dough conditioner, makes bread puffier, fluffier, and easier to mass produce. But it also happens to be a known carcinogen. Lab tests linked it to cancer, which is why it's banned in the UK, Canada, and the EU. Yet in the US, it's still legal. Why? Because it's cheaper for food manufacturers to use than safer alternatives. Your health? Not exactly their priority. Then there's azotocarbonamide, a chemical better known for its role in making yoga mats spongy. Yes, yoga mats. And yet, it's tossed into bread to bleach the flour and improve texture. When baked, it breaks down into compounds that have been linked to asthma, allergies, and respiratory issues. Other countries banned it. The US gave it the green light. Calcium propionate keeps bread from molding too quickly. Sounds harmless until you realize it's been linked to hyperactivity, restlessness, and behavioral changes in children. Studies suggest it may play a role in ADHD-like symptoms, yet companies keep using it because, well, long shelf life equals more money. High fructose corn syrup? That's just another way of saying ultra-processed sugar overload. It's been connected to obesity, diabetes, liver failure, and even heart disease. But food companies love it because it's cheap, addictive, and keeps customers coming back for more. And let's talk about artificial colors. Some breads are dyed with chemicals derived from petroleum. That's right, petroleum. Yellow dye number 5 and number 6 have been linked to hyperactivity and behavioral issues in children. But they're still used to make food look better. Because apparently, aesthetics matter more than health. Emulsifiers and dough conditioners, like mono and diglycerides, datum and sodium stearoyl lactylate, keep bread soft and stretchy. But some of these additives have been found to disrupt gut bacteria, potentially leading to obesity and irritable bowel syndrome. So while you think you're just eating a sandwich, your gut microbiome is taking a hit. Flour bleaching agents like chlorine dioxide and benzoyl peroxide strip flour of nutrients and may leave behind harmful residues. But hey, at least the bread looks whiter, right? Then there are preservatives like BHA and BHT designed to keep bread from spoiling. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services even labeled BHA as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen. Yet here it is, sitting on store shelves, wrapped in plastic, ready for your next meal. And let's not forget genetically modified wheat. Engineered for higher gluten content and increased yields, it's been linked to inflammation and allergic reactions. But do they tell you that? Of course not. So what can you do? Read the labels. If it sounds like it belongs in a science lab instead of your kitchen, maybe don't eat it. Go for whole grains. Bake your own bread if you can. And if you must buy store-bought, organic is your safest bet. Because at the end of the day, the choice is yours. The food industry is banking on you not paying attention. Maybe it's time to prove them wrong. Bread isn't the only thing loaded with questionable chemicals. Let's talk about another everyday favorite, potato chips. Crispy, salty, addictive. But what exactly are you eating? Just potatoes, oil, and salt? Not quite. Start with acrylamide. Never heard of it? That's because no one's rushing to put it on the label. This chemical forms when starchy foods, like potatoes, are cooked at high temperatures. Think frying, roasting, baking, all the ways chips are made. Scientists found that acrylamide exposure caused cancer in lab rats. And while studies on humans aren't as clear-cut, the FDA still considers it a potential health risk. But don't expect the snack industry to slow down. There's no profit in making food safer when people keep buying it anyway. Then there's sodium bisulfite, a preservative meant to stop discoloration and bacterial growth. Sounds useful until you realize it might mess with your vitamin B12 levels. B12 is crucial for nerve function and energy. But who needs those things, right? The problem? Research on this interaction is lacking. No one's really studying what happens when people consume it long term. Because again, why would they? Less research means less regulation. And let's not forget the artificial flavors and colors. Think about it. Why do all chips of the same brand taste identical, no matter when or where you buy them? Because they're engineered to. Chemical compounds mimic flavors, ensuring every bite is as addictive as the last. And those bright colors? They don't come from nature. Some artificial additives have been linked to allergies and even behavioral issues in children, but they're legal, so manufacturers keep using them. If potato chips are a chemical minefield, candy is pure, weaponized sugar. It's not just a sweet treat. It's a slow-moving health disaster wrapped in bright colors and cartoon mascots. And the worst part? They've convinced everyone it's harmless fun. Start with the obvious: your teeth. Sugar feeds bacteria, bacteria produce acid, acid eats enamel. That's how cavities happen. But some candies take the damage to another level. Sticky ones cling to teeth, letting the sugar sit there and rot away at your enamel long after you've swallowed. Hard candies dissolve slowly, stretching out the attack on your teeth. It's not just bad for your smile, it's a dentist's dream come true. And let's talk about weight gain. Candy is empty calories, pure and simple. It's designed to spike your blood sugar, leave you wanting more, and offer nothing of real value. Eat enough of it, and your body starts packing on the pounds. And we all know where that leads: obesity, heart disease, and a body struggling to function under the weight of constant sugar overload. But hey, it's just a little treat, right? That's what they want you to believe. Then there's diabetes. Your body can only take so much sugar abuse before it fights back. Constant sugar spikes lead to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance leads to type 2 diabetes. And once you're there, your body's ability to regulate blood sugar is shot, opening the door to lifelong health problems. The food industry knows this, yet they keep cranking out new flavors, new packaging, new reasons for you to reach for another handful. Heart disease is another lovely perk of excess sugar. It raises blood pressure, fuels chronic inflammation, and increases triglyceride levels. You might not feel the effects immediately, but over time, your heart is paying the price. The irony? The same companies pushing candy also fund heart health campaigns. They profit from both sides, selling you the problem, then pretending to care about the solution. And here's something they really don't want you to consider: your brain. Sugar isn't just bad for your body, it messes with your mind. Research links excessive sugar intake to depression, brain fog, and cognitive decline. Think about it. How often do you feel sluggish, irritable, or mentally drained after a sugar binge? That's not a coincidence. It's a cycle designed to keep you coming back for more. If candy is bad, soda is liquid poison. It's sugar, acid, and artificial chemicals all mixed into a perfectly marketed can of destruction, and people drink it like water. Ever wonder why? Because it's designed that way. Let's start with the sugar. One can of soda has around 10 teaspoons of the stuff. That's more than your body knows what to do with. Drink enough, and your blood sugar spikes. Your insulin goes into overdrive, and your body starts storing fat, like it's preparing for a famine. And the result? Weight gain, obesity, and a one-way ticket to metabolic disaster. The soda industry knows this. They just don't care. Then there's diabetes. Chugging sugary drinks is one of the fastest ways to develop insulin resistance. Your body gets flooded with sugar so often that it stops responding properly. Eventually, type 2 diabetes kicks in, and now you're stuck with a chronic illness, all because of a drink they made you think was harmless. Think your heart is safe? Think again. The link between sugary beverages and heart disease is well documented. All that sugar raises your triglycerides, spikes your blood pressure, and fuels inflammation in your arteries. But go ahead, grab another can. That polar bear in the commercial says it's fine, and we haven't even gotten to what it does to your teeth. The acid in soda? It's strong enough to strip paint. Now imagine what it does to your enamel. Every sip bathes your teeth in an acidic bath, weakening them, making them prone to cavities, and ensuring you keep dentists in business for life. The worst part is, soda doesn't even satisfy you. It's full of empty calories, meaning you get all the downsides of consuming sugar with none of the benefits of actual food, and it rewires your brain. Sugar cravings get worse, making you reach for more soda, more junk, more of the garbage they're selling.
Natalie, about RFK Jr.
Major, good to be with you. Well, Senator Sanders, as chair of the Help Committee.
Soda wrecks your body, but fast food burgers, they take things to another level. They're not just food. They're engineered, processed, chemically altered products designed to keep you hooked. And the worst part? Most people don't even question it. Let's talk about the fat. Fast food burgers are loaded with saturated fat, the kind that clogs arteries and drives up your cholesterol. The American Heart Association says you should limit it to 13 grams per day. One burger can obliterate that in a single meal. Think about that. One meal, and your heart is already working overtime to keep up. Then there's the sodium. Fast food is packed with it because salt isn't just a flavor enhancer. It's addictive. Too much sodium raises your blood pressure, puts strain on your heart, and increases your risk of stroke. And yet, they pile it on. Why? Because it keeps you coming back for more. And let's not ignore the chemicals. These burgers aren't just meat. They're Frankenstein creations, packed with preservatives, additives, and flavor enhancers to make them last longer and taste better than real food ever should. Some of these chemicals have been linked to metabolic disorders, heart disease, and other health nightmares, but you won't see that on the menu. And if you think that's bad, let's talk about pink slime. Some fast food chains have been caught using ammonia-treated beef, yes, ammonia, the stuff used in cleaning products, to kill bacteria in their meat. They call it lean, finely textured beef. Sounds better, right? That's the game. Repackage the problem. Make it sound safe. Keep the public uninformed. Still hungry? Now, let's talk portion sizes. Fast food is designed to be oversized. A single meal can pack enough calories for an entire day. And if you're not burning that off, it turns into fat, fueling obesity, diabetes, and a whole list of chronic diseases. But hey, they'll just slap a grilled chicken option on the menu and act like they care. They don't. They just want you in the drive-thru again tomorrow. Fast food is one thing. At least you know it's garbage. But what if I told you there's a luxury coffee out there? One of the most expensive in the world, made from beans that have been eaten, digested, and excreted by a wild animal, and that people actually drink it? It's called Kopi Luwak. Supposedly, the digestive process of the Asian palm civet enhances the coffee's flavor, making it smoother and less acidic. Sounds exotic, right? That's what they want you to think. They don't want you asking where this coffee really comes from. They don't want you looking behind the curtain, because if you did, you'd find a horror show. Wild civets, these small cat-like creatures, are supposed to roam freely, eating a varied diet. But in the world of Kopi Luwak, that doesn't happen. To meet demand, civets are snatched from the wild and thrown into tiny, filthy cages. Rows upon rows of them, packed together like factory-farmed chickens. They don't get to choose what they eat anymore. No variety, no balance, just coffee cherries. All day, every day. And their bodies can't handle it. Malnutrition sets in. They lose fur. They get sick. Some don't make it. But that's not the worst part. These nocturnal animals, who should be slinking through dense forests under the cover of darkness, instead spend their days pacing, biting the bars of their cages, slowly going insane. Stress, agitation, self-mutilation, classic signs of an animal losing its mind in captivity. But as long as they keep producing those precious coffee beans, nobody cares. And even if a brand claims their coffee is wild-sourced, there's no real way to prove it. The industry is so shady that coffee from suffering, caged animals gets passed off as the real deal all the time. Even Tony Wild, the guy who first introduced Kopi Luwak to the West, has spoken out against it. If the man who helped make it famous is telling you it's a scam built on cruelty, maybe, just maybe, it's time to listen.
All right, I have to ask, you are in great shape. Can you go through your diet and exercise routine?
You already know they'll put just about anything in your food if it makes it cheaper, brighter, or more addictive. But did you know they're feeding you petroleum? Yeah, that same stuff that keeps your car running. They've turned it into a food coloring and pumped it into everything from your cereal to your soda. They call it Red Dye 40. Sounds harmless, right? That's the trick. They give it a bland, official-sounding name so you don't ask questions, so you don't notice it's everywhere. But some studies suggest it messes with kids' brains. Hyperactivity, attention issues, behavioral problems. And yet, here it is, splashed all over your grocery store shelves, hidden in plain sight. The US lets food companies dump it into whatever they want, candy, snacks, processed foods, while European countries slap warning labels on it or ban it outright. Think about that. One country sees enough red flags to warn parents. The other hands it out like candy, literally. And if you think they make it easy to spot, think again. They don't just call it Red Dye 40. They disguise it under different names: Allura Red AC, Red 40 Lake, FD, and C Red number. 40 aluminum lake, because the more confusing it sounds, the less likely you are to connect the dots. But now that you know, you can start looking, start reading labels, and maybe, just maybe, start questioning why they're feeding your kids something that might be rewiring their brains. You probably never thought twice about chewing gum. Just a harmless habit, right? A quick fix for bad breath, something to keep your mouth busy. But what if I told you that little stick of gum isn't as innocent as it seems? That with every chew, you might be gnawing on sheep's wool, swallowing artificial chemicals, and, get this, possibly even leaching mercury from your own teeth. Yeah, let's talk about what they don't tell you. Lanolin. Sounds fancy, but it's just a waxy secretion scraped off sheep's wool. They slip it into gum to make it soft and chewy. So next time you pop a piece in your mouth, just remember, you're literally chewing on processed wool grease. And if you're vegan or vegetarian, oops, guess they forgot to mention that. Then there's the artificial sweeteners. Sugar-free gum? Great for your teeth, but maybe not for the rest of you. Sorbitol can turn your stomach into a war zone, bloating, cramps, and if you overdo it, well, let's just say you'll want to stay close to a bathroom. Aspartame? Even worse. Some people get hives, some get stomach aches, and others get breathing problems. But hey, at least it's low calorie, right?
Because they're the biggest advertisers for them and food. And they're brainwashing us. And then, of course, they're...
Canned mushrooms aren't safe either. Those innocent-looking slices floating in murky liquid come with more than just an earthy taste. They're laced with chemicals, sodium overload, and, if you're really unlucky, a deadly neurotoxin. But sure, go ahead and toss them in your pasta. Let's start with BPA. Ever wonder why canned foods last forever? That's because they're lined with a chemical shield, one that also happens to leach into your food. BPA is used in can linings to keep them from corroding. But here's the fun part. When exposed to heat or acidity, it starts breaking down, seeping into whatever's inside. And since mushrooms aren't exactly acidic, you might think you're safe. You'd be wrong. Some brands still use BPA, meaning you're just one can away from swallowing a little extra dose of synthetic hormones. They say the health effects are still under investigation. Sure, just like they used to say cigarettes were harmless. And if chemical exposure doesn't get you, the salt might. Canned mushrooms are loaded with sodium because nothing says fresh from nature like a briny chemical bath. Too much salt spikes your blood pressure, puts a strain on your heart, and leaves you bloated. But don't worry, they suggest you rinse them to reduce sodium. Right, because that's totally going to undo the processing that made them little sodium sponges in the first place. Still with me? Good. Because now we get to the real nightmare. Botulism. Ever heard of Clostridium botulinum? It's a bacterium that thrives in low oxygen environments. And guess what a sealed metal can is? That's right, a perfect little anaerobic death trap. If mushrooms aren't canned perfectly, this bacterium can slip in and start producing a neurotoxin so powerful it can paralyze you. Literally. Botulism is rare, but when it does happen, it's catastrophic. People have died from under-processed canned mushrooms. Recalls happen, safety measures improve, and yet here we are, still trusting mass-produced fungi in a metal box.
The stuff that he eats is really, like, bad.
You made it through canned mushrooms, but now it's time to talk about something even worse. Something so ingrained in backyard barbecues, baseball games, and childhood lunches that people don't even question it anymore. The hot dog. Let's be clear, hot dogs aren't just unhealthy. They're straight up carcinogenic. That's not speculation. That's not fear-mongering. That's straight from the World Health Organization, which classified processed meats as Group 1 carcinogens. That means they're in the same category as asbestos and smoking. But sure, go ahead and toss another one on the grill. It all comes down to nitrates and nitrites. These are the chemicals that keep hot dogs looking fresh and pink instead of the sad gray tubes of mystery meat they actually are. They also happen to form nitrosamines, which are proven to cause cancer. And it doesn't take much. One single hot dog a day, just one, increases your risk of colorectal cancer by 20%. That's not some vague theoretical risk. That's a statistical reality. And if you think this only applies to adults, think again. Kids are getting the worst of it. Studies have shown that children who eat just 12 hot dogs a month are 9 times more likely to develop leukemia. Read that again. 9 times more likely. That's not a small risk. That's terrifying. And it doesn't stop there. If a pregnant woman eats hot dogs, higher risk of brain tumors in her baby. If a father eats hot dogs before conception, same thing. It's almost like these things were engineered to be dangerous. Of course, the industry will tell you there's nothing to worry about. They'll tell you nitrates occur naturally in some vegetables. So why panic? Here's why. Vegetables also contain antioxidants that neutralize nitrosamines. Hot dogs? Not so much. What they do contain is a mix of processed meat scraps, preservatives, and enough sodium to make your arteries weep.
Food safety is on the menu during a meeting between Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
And just like that, we stumble into one of the biggest, quietest scandals in American food regulation, the GRAS program. You know, the one that lets companies decide on their own whether an additive is safe before slipping it into your food. No FDA review, no public notice, no real accountability. If that sounds absurd, that's because it is. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is trying to rip the lid off it. He's targeting what's called the self-affirmed GRAS pathway, a loophole so gaping you could drive a semi-truck full of chemical-laced snacks through it. Since 1997, food companies have had the power to quietly declare their own ingredients safe without telling the FDA or anyone else. How did this even happen? Because regulators, in their infinite wisdom, decided that corporations, the same ones that cut corners to boost profits, should be trusted to police themselves. What could go wrong? Plenty. That's why Kennedy is moving to scrap this system entirely. No more secret safety assessments. No more mystery chemicals sliding into the food supply without so much as a raised eyebrow from the FDA. He's pushing for mandatory reviews of every new food ingredient before it ever hits the market. Sounds reasonable, right? Unless, of course, you're a billion-dollar food conglomerate that prefers the status quo. This isn't just bureaucratic housekeeping, it's an attempt to reverse decades of regulatory negligence. The GRAS rule was originally meant for actual common ingredients, things like salt, vinegar, and olive oil. But once corporations realized they could self-certify new chemicals, the floodgates opened. Enter substances like brominated vegetable oil, a flame retardant that somehow found its way into sodas for years. Or red dye number 3, linked to cancer in lab tests since the 1980s, yet still sitting on grocery store shelves until it was finally banned in 2025. Think about that for a second. The government knew these chemicals were dangerous for decades, and yet, thanks to this absurd regulatory blind spot, they remained in food long enough for multiple generations to consume them. And that's just the stuff we know about. With the federal government dragging its feet, states like California have started taking matters into their own hands, banning a handful of the worst offenders. But this piecemeal approach doesn't fix the bigger issue, an industry that's been left to regulate itself. Kennedy wants to shut this loophole down at the source. He's working with Congress to lock these changes into law, making sure companies can't just sneak dangerous additives into the food supply while the FDA looks the other way. Of course, the food industry isn't exactly thrilled. The Consumer Brands Association, basically a lobbying arm for the biggest food corporations, has been pushing back, arguing that forcing companies to actually prove their additives are safe would stifle innovation. Innovation in what, exactly? Cheap preservatives? Artificial flavor enhancers? Chemicals that no other developed country allows in their food? And then there's the FDA itself. Even if Kennedy gets his way, there's another hurdle: resources. The agency has been historically underfunded and overburdened, making it easy for companies to sidestep real oversight. Past attempts to overhaul GRAS stalled out because the FDA simply didn't have the time, money, or political will to challenge big food. Kennedy is determined to change that. And that's where things get really interesting, because this isn't just about a few artificial dyes. It's about an entire system designed to keep the public in the dark, while corporations pump their products full of chemicals that no one asked for. For decades, food companies have had a free pass to slip questionable additives into everything from snacks to sodas, all under the protection of a regulatory loophole so absurd it barely sounds real. The self-affirmed GRAS process, generally recognized as safe. Sounds reassuring, right? Until you realize that companies get to decide for themselves whether a new ingredient is safe. No independent review, no public oversight, no requirement to even tell the FDA what they're putting in your food. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wants to shut that down. He's demanding an end to the self-affirmed GRAS system, forcing food companies to actually prove their ingredients are safe before dumping them onto grocery store shelves. That means no more untested emulsifiers, preservatives, or synthetic chemicals quietly slipping past regulators while Americans unknowingly consume them for years. And if history tells us anything, it's that companies won't give up this loophole without a fight. Just look at how long it took to get rid of known toxic additives. Brominated vegetable oil, an ingredient banned in over 100 countries, lingered in American soft drinks for decades before it was finally removed in 2024. Red dye number 3 ? Linked to cancer in the 1980s, but it took until 2025 for it to be banned. How does that happen? How do companies keep using these chemicals for years after the risks are well documented? Because the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as it was designed. That's why the Consumer Brands Association, representing giants like PepsiCo and Kraft Heinz, has been scrambling to get ahead of Kennedy's crackdown. They're not fighting for consumer health. They're fighting to protect a system that lets them operate with zero accountability. Their biggest fear? A future where they actually have to justify what they're putting in your food. And it's not just about additives. This is a fight over control. Who gets to decide what goes into the food supply? For decades, it's been the corporations calling the shots, using legal loopholes to dodge scrutiny. Kennedy wants to change that. He's making it clear, if the industry doesn't start cleaning up its act, he'll do it for them. What else do you think the food industry is hiding from us? Is it slowly killing us?